And just like that, the Miami Hurricanes have found their new running backs coach. He goes from the University of South Florida to actual South Florida. Matt Merritt, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Got the recruiting overlord is going to join us here in a second. And every time Brian Smith hops on the show, he is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So Miami Hurricanes are reportedly, Matt Zenitz was the first to report that Miami is likely to hire Matt Merritt. He most recently has served this past season as the associate head coach and run game coordinator for the USF Bulls. We'll talk about their running attack, which was actually pretty impressive this past year. In addition to coaching at USF, Merritt has coached at Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia Southern, and JMU. So he's been literally all over America. I'm told he's an energetic recruiter, young, up-and-coming type coach, which is really important. And as we welcome in the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith. Brian, I mentioned that Matt Merritt is an energetic recruiter, and that's obviously non-negotiable if you want to work for Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, it doesn't work real well when you're not. You don't tend to stay around Mario very long. So here's some of the interesting points with him. When he was a grad assistant at Ohio State, he coached Ezekiel Elliott. He's been under Urban Meyer, obviously, who's, in my opinion, the greatest recruiter just about ever. And he's also been under Cignetti, the guy that just took the Indiana job, who had great passing offense. He's had great running offenses. You know, he's been around really important people to help him as a coach and as a recruiter. And your point about he's still a young, energetic guy, this is a pretty interesting hire for the Canes.
Yeah, it sure is. So a little bit more on Merritt, because I've been giving myself a crash course on him for really the last few hours, because this is one of those things, Brian, where for the couple of weeks that this running backs coach job has been open, we've thrown out a ton of names of possible Miami targets. But as usual, the loafers work in silence. And as a lot of you watching this, listening to this predicted, Mario was going to end up hiring a guy that none of us were talking about. And that's exactly what is going down here. But something that impressed me about his brief time at USF, their running back room, their running game ranked 32nd in America, which is pretty good, 182.8 rushing yards per game. And Brian, I like the fact that Matt Merritt seemed to do a good job managing a pretty big running back rotation, which is the kind of thing he's going to have at Miami. He had 3 running backs with at least 350 yards last year. His top 3 rushers, Byron Brown, Naquan Wright, and Michelle Dukes combined for 1,956 yards, so nearly 2,000 yards combined, and 21 rushing touchdowns. They had 4 running backs with at least 60 carries. So I think we both thought that Tim Harris Jr. did a good job kind of managing the rotation last year. Matt Merritt has a history of managing rotations.
It's going to be interesting because we don't really know what's going on with Mr. Fletcher, and there are several guys coming back, and they got 2 really good running backs coming in. I think Lyle could play early. How he manages that, especially some of the younger guys, like we discussed a few times, A.J. Allen needs to improve his pass protection. Does he get him up to speed on that? Because that's an important part. He can definitely run the ball and catch the ball, but you got to pass block. I mean, you have to. So there's a lot of little challenges, and he's got a lot of talent. Now, which guys play, and does he rotate them like Tim did in certain games for certain situations? Tim did a great job. Now, this is a big shoes to fill, but an opportunity. I mean, for a guy that's up and coming, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's certainly a lot to work with in Miami's running back room, Brian. And, I would imagine Mark Fletcher, who had offseason surgery, I can't say for sure if he's going to be ready or not for the opening game against Florida. If he's not, I would imagine Henry Parrish would start, and he's got so much experience, and A.J. Allen would play a lot, and hopefully Trevante Citizen, that's the guy who's kind of the X factor here because we haven't seen him at college yet.
I have no idea what to expect when Trevante gets on the field. I don't know if Trevante would know what to expect. I mean, it's been 2 years, man.
Yeah.
He was a dude coming out of high school in Louisiana. Everybody liked him. He was recruited by the SEC, Miami, etc. Maybe he can be, if Fletcher is banged up, the guy that they kind of lean on for short yardage or something. I don't know. Cristobal, Mirabal, and that entire staff want to run downhill, though. So the running back coach is a little more important at UM than it is at just any given school. So I'm curious. And the offensive line should be really good again. Getting Carpenter from Indiana, et cetera, that's going to be a good unit. They got all the pieces now. They just got to put them together.
We are going to be talking some recruiting on this episode with our recruiting overlord, Brian Smith. But funny, Brian, because when I woke up this morning, I didn't think of the fact right away that today is National Signing Day. Today is February National Signing Day, but this has got to be the quietest late National Signing Day in the history of college football. And it's completely quiet from Miami because, Brian, I'm not expecting Miami to add anybody to their class of 2024 today. We've been talking 2025s for the last few weeks. I think with the class of 2024, top 5 class, 27 signees, I think Miami's done for the day.
That's a good thing, though. That means you got your work done. You might add a walk-on or something like that. And that's cool. You need those kinds of things in your program where guys are coming in to help. But that's the new age of recruiting. If you don't have it done in December, it probably isn't going to end the way you had hoped. I just wrote about it. Miami's got 8 D linemen signees. They got a great receiver group. And you mentioned top 5. Hey, it's great for us that we got it all done. It's a little easier for us here at All Hurricanes and on your podcast. But Miami's in good shape for 25 too. They're rolling there as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of 2025 prospects on this episode. I want to talk about Vernell Brown. We've been talking about him a lot on the show for the last few days, but I don't think Brian and I have broken down the Orlando Jones playmaker just yet. I want to talk more about Jamie French, who's had a couple of visits to Miami within the last couple of weeks. Same thing with Chris Ewald Jr. And, I want to talk about a 4-star cornerback out of Oklahoma, Tristan Haynes, who's setting up a March visit at Miami, according to 24/7 Sports. And I want to break down something that Brian wrote this week at allhurricanes.com about 3 players on the current roster who could be keys for Miami making a college football playoff type of run this year. Now, remember, they are expanding that thing to 12. So, you're telling me there's a chance, the old Lloyd Christmas. So you want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We have so much to talk about on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. My head is spinning when I see all the great deals they have right now on the Game Time app and gametime.co. Because, folks, buying last-minute tickets to sporting events should not be a stressful experience. Imagine what you could do, by the way, with an extra $100 in Vegas if you were there for the big game. Would you buy yourself a great dinner? Would you put it all on red? Flash deals, zone deals right now at Game Time. For you South Floridians out there, I'm looking at tickets tonight for the Miami Heat hosting the San Antonio Spurs for as little as $20 a pop. I don't think I've seen Heat tickets that cheap since the George W. Bush administration, but you can get $20 tickets right now on the Game Time app, guys. You can see the views you're going to get from your seats right there on the app. There's no hidden fees. They give you all-in prices, so you know exactly what you're going to pay for these tickets, guys. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Right now, all Game Time users get $100 off a big game ticket. So if you want to buy a ticket to that big game that's happening on Sunday, use our code Vegas100. That's easy to remember, right? Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Game Time app and use code Vegas100 for a $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this Recruiting Overlord episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We are free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. For the everydayers, we love you. The everydayers, if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our Locked On Canes VIP chat called Locked On Canes Insiders. I include the link in the show description below. We're giving you guys recruiting scoops. transfer portal updates, breaking news. If Miami does surprise us and sign somebody today, you know you're going to hear about it on Locked On Canes. We've been running some stats out there today on the new running backs coach, what his unit did at USF this past year. What can we expect from Matt Merritt? You can check out all of that by clicking the link in the show description below to sign up for Locked On Canes Insiders. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in after 2 weeks for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. All right, so Brian, I want to talk about some of these 2025 recruits Miami's going after, because you mentioned Miami already has it rolling pretty nicely in the class. Talk to me about Vernell Brown, wide receiver, two-way guy, athlete out of Jones High in Orlando. He's been down for 7-on-7s the last couple of weeks. He's visited Miami's campus, and I was watching video of him in the latest 7-on-7, and the guy looks like you can't cover him. He was the MVP. He was making catches all over the field.
It's always a good sign when you're the MVP and the guy lined up next to you is arguably the number one receiver in the country, and Jamie French. So
yeah, that's right.
Vernell is from Jones High School in Orlando. If you want entertainment, flip on his huddle film. The first clip I watched at least 10 times. I counted it a couple of times to make sure. He made 7 guys miss on one play. So if you do that, you're in pretty good company. I've only seen one guy make more players miss on a clip in my life. So he's a special talent. He'll do everything wrong on a play and score. He just has that kind of speed where, like, you don't want to go across the field. Well, Vernell can do that. He has the ability to just make guys miss. He has really good hands. I saw him play live twice last year for Jones. He can make the diving catch in the end zone, or he can take a 3-yard screen and turn it into a 20-yard gain. The thing about him that I was surprised about is now he's doing it like at the 7-on-7 battle tournament. He was dominating there as well.
Yeah.
And that's against elite corners from California and, all over the Midwest, Texas, etc. He's really difficult to defend. I don't know which spot I would play him at, but that's a good problem. He's kind of like JoJo. You could play him in slot or out wide. It wouldn't make any difference. It's hard to get your hands on him at the line, and then his feet kind of get him open from there. So I love his upside, and he's got offers from just about everybody.
Yeah, and tell me about his recruitment, because it looks like an in-state battle for him. And I know he has offers out of state, Auburn, Alabama, but I'm looking at the On3 prediction machine, which is not an exact science, as we know. I mean, Miami just landed an offensive lineman out of Tallahassee area that they had like a 4% chance to land. But bear with me here. On the prediction machine, the Florida Gators are favored at 44.8%. Miami second at 16.1%. USF is in there at 7.2%, and Florida State at 6.0%. How do you feel like Vernell's recruitment has been trending so far?
Well, I mean, he's been at Miami here recently, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
I know that I've messaged with him a little bit the last couple of days. I mean, he really likes Miami's receiver coach, Coach Beard. I think that Miami's at the top of the board personally, but that's most recent in Vernell's mind. He's 17-year-old.
Right.
That does matter. Having stated that, he's a 4.9 GPA kid. He takes things seriously. He's going to take things a little bit differently than a lot of kids would. I think Miami's got a lot to sell him because it's a great school, and they've got a receiver coach. It's got a track record, and Miami's going to throw it around it's pretty proven what they can do with their offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson. So I'm going to see him this upcoming weekend, and I'm going to interview. I told him I wanted to get more scoop on it. But right now, I kind of like Miami's chances, to be honest, just from talking to him a little bit. I'm curious more about what he thinks about Florida, because that situation there is so up in the air.
Yeah.
I want a face-to-face with him to find out, because they are one of the schools that's definitely involved, and they should be with Orlando kids by all means. But I don't see them getting a lot of elite players until they prove something on the field. So that's just me being skeptical, possibly.
Now, how about his 7-on-7 pal, Jamie French? We've talked about him probably in our 2 or 3 most recent episodes, but anything new you're hearing on his recruitment? Because things have been pretty open for him ever since his Alabama decommitment.
The only thing that I know of late is that he's trying to figure out kind of like a spring schedule. Everybody's beating up on him because Saban's no longer a part of the Alabama program as the head coach. He's still there, and he's like overwhelmed. I know that from firsthand conversation. It's like, I'm just trying to kind of figure this out. And just from reading it from a few other people that have spoken to him, I don't think there's much to report until he gets through about the month of March because his visit list will be one of the most contested in the country. He's got schools, Miami to Notre Dame, everywhere in between, trying to get him on campus. His recruitment is really broad. Ohio State is what he told me would be his next visit, but I don't even know if he's got that date set, to be honest with you. So I'm curious to see Jamie. I assume I'll see him again this weekend at the Under Armour event, and everybody be crowded around him, asking him the same questions that we're talking about. But I don't really expect a whole lot of info yet.
We are a little over 24 hours away from Owen Strebig, the 6'8" offensive lineman out of Wisconsin. He's going to be announcing his commitment tomorrow, February 8th. He's got a top 5. He has even said himself that Notre Dame and Miami are his top 2. But, I try to be honest with my viewers that Notre Dame has been the team that is trending, and I think they are the team to beat in his recruitment. Is it still trending towards the Irish for Strebig?
Once Tom Loy put in a Cristobal for Notre Dame, I think we can pretty much write that one off.
Yeah.
Tom he talks to Notre Dame staff. He knows what's going on. Something would have to change. Otherwise, Strebig's headed to the Irish.
Okay. Well, fair enough. All right, let's talk about players who hopefully could be headed to Miami. What about Chris Ewald, the corner out of Chaminade Madonna, who's another one? He's been on campus the last couple of weeks at Miami, 7-on-7s. He's made a lot of unofficial visits to the University of Miami. I feel like this guy is about as close to a must get as Miami can get in this class. I also put DJ Pickett in that category, but to me, Chris Ewald, especially being a local, I view him as a must get. How's Miami trending there?
If they don't end up with him, I would be surprised. Now, I have a lot of faith, as I've said many times on All Hurricanes, in what this staff does as recruiters. That being stated, I've asked a few coaches off the record down in the South Florida, Broward, Dade area here lately, what's Mario like? Is it still the same? And like every time I talk to somebody, it's the same pitch. He was just here, or so-and-so was just here. They're really coming after him, blah, 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 American heritage, etc. It doesn't matter which school I talk to. Ewald is like top of the board for them. Number one, he's a tremendous player at a spot they need. David Lake, our buddy over at 247, did an article that was really good on the cornerback situation for Miami. They've struggled to get the elite kids. It's weird because you think about Miami, 80s, 90s, they always had corners. For whatever reason, they haven't gotten the top 10 guys, although I think Damari should have been ranked higher. I think Damari's their next star corner, but this is a chance to get that guy. And he's South Florida. We both know how important that guy can be. If you get Ewald, it can also help you because right now Chaminade is loaded. They lost a bunch of kids. Trust me, they are loaded once again.
Still loaded. Yeah.
Yeah, from freshman class up, that's as dominant a program in the state of Florida, and that's a Pied Piper. Everybody respects him on that roster, and he was committed to Michigan. Jim Harbaugh knows talent. There is a reason he targeted him as a freshman. Now he's decommitted. This is the kid they got to get. Everything I've heard, Miami's in the spot they need to be, but Florida State's not going to give up for it. All these schools. I'm going to see him at Under Armour Miami pretty soon. I want to hear it from his face. I haven't talked to him recently, but again, I think Miami's team to beat.
So just a big picture on Miami recruiting. So Mario Cristobal, after going 5-7, was able to get a top 7 class. After going 7-6, was able to get really 7-5 because most of this was done before the bowl game. After going 7-5, he's able to get a top 7 class. Now it's time to actually start winning, right, Brian? Because you can only do so much with promises of the future and relationship, because relationship building is great, but then if players aren't seeing results, like Miami's got to keep improving record wise, right? Like they can't go 7-5 again and get another top 5 class, can they?
They could, but I think that class could fall apart. Like if Miami goes limping into late November and they're like 7-3 with 2 bad losses, and you know what I mean? And they're out of the ACC hunt, I think that would be bad. In my opinion, and I was talking to a buddy of mine about this the other day, John Santucci from USA Today. I said, look, I have Miami as going to the playoff. And he goes, why? And I said, have you seen their schedule? And we're on the phone, and he pulls it up and he goes, oh my gosh. They don't play Clemson, they don't play North Carolina, and they don't play North Carolina State. I said, I know, I already looked it up. Why do you think I'm picking them to go to the playoff? I said, they got the most talent in the conference, and they don't play 3 of the top 5 teams that could potentially play Miami. Look, except for the opening game, I think it's August 31st at the Swamp, which I have no idea what's going to happen with Florida. I don't think anybody does. Miami's schedule is really set up well. Louisville is off a bye. It is up there, and it's right before Florida State. Except for that little gap, look, if they don't win at least 9 games, that's on the staff. I'm sorry, because they got the talent now, and the schedule is extremely favorable. It's time to win some ball games.
How about that breaking news for the ticker? Brian Smith is predicting college football playoff for Miami in 2024. I love it. Okay, so and you wrote a great article at allhurricanes.com this week about 3 players who could be the keys to Miami making that CFP type of run. Let's talk about who those key players are when we come back. My friends, we're not done yet. We're still only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. Guys, I'm starting to get my bet slip ready for that big game on Sunday. Little thing we call the Super Bowl, and I'm getting that ready at FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways to end the season on a W or 2 or 3, because not only can you bet who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown. I know that there's this whole NFL narrative thing with Taylor Swift. Travis Kelce's not going to not score a touchdown in that game. I like Travis Kelce at even money for anytime touchdown scorer. You can bet on how many points will be scored and so much more. I'm glad I've actually waited to lock in the Kansas City Chiefs, because they're now they're now plus 2.5 instead of plus 1.5 like they were earlier this week. So there's a lot of value, guys. Check it out at FanDuel. New customers, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This network, Locked On, has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports YouTube channel. It's called Locked On Sports Today. I'm sure they're talking a lot about the Super Bowl this weekend. Check out Locked On Sports Today. It's streaming 24 hours a day with national experts and local experts like myself going through that channel 24/7. Locked On Sports Today. Make sure to watch. We're talking recruiting with Brian Smith, allhurricanes.com. He is my colleague there. And Brian, you wrote a compelling article this week. And again, you're trying to get me to drink this Kool-Aid on a 2024 college football playoff run. Outside of, and I'm glad you noted this in your piece, because players like Cam Ward and Ruben Bain are very obvious that they hold keys to the season. So you can kind of take them out. That's just known. Players outside of Ward and Bain that you think are keys for Miami to make it to the CFP.
3, 2, 1, number one out of that group going down the list. It's got to be Restrepo. And the reason I point him out is he's, in my opinion, you can certainly talk about this more, Alex. He's the backbone of that locker room. If there's a guy more respected than X, boy, I want to meet that dude. I want to shake his hand, because everybody I've talked to loves what X does. Like if they're up 20, they're down 20. His attitude when he walks out onto the field is the same. That's as rare as it gets. And he obviously produced. He had 1,000 yards and all the touchdowns and all that. Here's the one thing that I think makes him different for this year. The only game that he didn't ball out last year is the one that he probably wanted to more than any other. And that's the Florida State game. Didn't have a catch.
That's
obviously,
right.
Emory was in the game.
Yeah.
They didn't have much, togetherness, if you will. And he missed one. He probably dropped one, but it was just a couple. They weren't on the same page. He was open. Mm-hmm. I would bet my bottom dollar he's going to get a pass in the first 2 to 3 plays of that game. Because, let's be honest, Mario knows that. So does Shannon Dawson. So does Kevin Beard. And probably Florida State too. But I just think you're going to get him the ball more, and that's going to be a key. If they're going to beat Florida State this year, and that'll be a good game like it is every year, it has to be partially at least Restrepo making the play. If Miami's going to get the playoff, and that's a barometer, he has to be that guy. The second guy is Carpenter. He's the kid that came down from Indiana. When you can get guys that have been in college football as long as he has, be 5th, 6th year senior as your pivot guy with a new quarterback. I know Cam's talented. It's still important. Look what Matt did last year.
Oh, he was amazing. Yeah.
I'm not saying he's Matt Lee. Let me be very, 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 very clear. Matt's going to start in the NFL.
Yeah.
Starting at center in the NFL, that is the ultimate war daddy kind of thing, because the guy in front of you snorts and is not friendly. So he's that guy. Carpenter's still pretty darn good, though, and I think that's going to help them because Miami should, correct me if I'm wrong, have a top 10 O-line, but if you're not making the right long line calls, that talent is mitigated. Going against Florida State, going against Florida, and some of these other teams are going to play, there's going to be chances to screw up, I'm sure. If he doesn't take his game up even another notch, he's got Maui Noah and all these guys with him, Miami may not make the playoff, but I think his experience, Mirabal coaching him, he's going to be a big thumbs up. Finally, it's a guy I mentioned a little bit ago. It's Damari Brown. Yeah. Miami needs somebody that, nothing wrong with Daryl Porter and some of the guys they've had, a bigger bodied corner to go against top-notch teams. It's either you have size or you don't. Damari is a physically strong young man. He's going to have this offseason. He's my number one player for Miami to make the playoff because you need a dominant dude. It could be somebody else. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased. I know him from recruiting, good kid, and he takes his craft seriously. If Miami's going to make the playoff, I think he will play a very large role.
I love it. Brian Smith always does an excellent job, and he's doing great work at allhurricanes.com. Check him out on X at FBScout_Florida. Make sure you guys are checking out LinkedIn Jobs. I'm telling you, folks, I've been on the other side of it. I'm not a small business owner, but I have gotten jobs from small business owners through LinkedIn Jobs. So I can tell you this works. So make sure you check that out. And folks, make sure you're supporting our channel. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, make sure to subscribe there and rate us 5 stars. It really helps the show grow. A lot of rhyming there. And guys, make sure you check out the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I include the link in the show description below. Brian, thank you so much, and enjoy probably the quietest national signing day of your career to this point.
Absolutely. Will do, sir.
I love it. We'll talk to everybody again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.